It's going to be a short sermon tonight. I heard that, Sean. Proverbs chapter 29. Proverbs chapter number 29. I want to personally thank you for your faithfulness to the Lord. A lot of churches. I had a good friend of mine pastored a church for 30 some years, and stepped down, and he wasn't down a year, I don't think, till the church split and blew apart and got all kinds of problems and issues. But Independent has stood the test because of your faithfulness, and I appreciate that. The Thursday night, I believe it was, I stopped at Fred Meyer and Palmer, and I came out of it was 9 o'clock or so, 9-ish, but I came out of the store and I heard, "Pastor Roach," and here came Mrs. Lowe across the parking lot. It was late. There wasn't a lot of cars there, but she was coming back from here, and I thought, what a faithful woman. I did think that probably you would be in that Guinness Book of World Records for pancakes made at camp. She's been cooking pancakes for a long time out at camp, and but just a lot of you just stood by the stuff. You've been faithful, and I appreciate that. I do appreciate your faithfulness, and it's been good to be with you. Betty wanted to be here, but she's been sick for 3 or 4 weeks, and she's just very tired now. But anyway, Proverbs chapter 29. I just basically want to ask you a question tonight, and that is, do you have a vision? You've heard a lot of testimonies and missionaries, and Brother Penix challenged you to go on a mission trip with him, but do you have a vision? I remember when Brother Penix went with Josh, he didn't have a vision for anything up there, but when he came back, his heart was changed, and you knew it. And he came back with a vision, and now it's bloomed into the remote Alaska mission. But it's if we all have a vision of something, listen, we will reach the goal of our faith promise. But Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 18 tells us why we should have a vision. Where there is no vision, the people perish. But he that keepeth the law, happy is he. Where there's no vision, the people in those villages will perish. Anchorage will perish. My phone went off here just a minute ago. There was a 4.0 earthquake out at Sutton. The other day there was like a 6-something in Japan. There's earthquakes all over the place. There's the world, again, is just coming apart at the seams. And without a vision, we're not going to be able to reach all these people. And all that's going on here in the church with the radio ministry and everything else, so we've got to keep all that going. And the mission program, we got to keep the missionaries on the field as long as we possibly can. Now, there may come a day in the near future when it'll be illegal to send missionaries. So we've got an open window now. And we need to step up to the plate and get the job done. But where there is no vision, the people perish. What causes a man to leave his home, to leave dad, mom, grandkids, and what causes a man, a woman to do that? And it's a vision that they get. The Apostle Paul, before he got saved, the only vision he had was destroying the church. In Acts chapter 9, Saul, yet breathing out threatening against us and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest and desired of him letters to Damascus to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. His vision was destroying the disciples of the Lord, was just making havoc of the church, getting rid of it. And as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven, and he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying, unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. See, Paul had declared war on the disciples, not knowing that he was declaring war on the Lord, not on the disciples. I mean, he was declaring war on Jesus the Christ, Jesus the Son of God. Paul declared war in the wrong place. But when Paul met Jesus on that road, his life changed. You know, when I met Jesus Christ, my everything about me changed. Everything changed. And my wife got a new husband. My kids got a new dad. I mean, my life was a train wreck. I've been writing this book, and I wrote all this stuff down about things, where I was, where I used to be, what I used to do, where I used to go, people I used to shoot at. I mean, just a lot of evil things. But then I came to January 24th, 1976, after I had met Norris Ward, and he brought the gospel to me. And 2 Corinthians 5:17 took over. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. Behold, all things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. And then it's just the Lord blessing here, and the Lord blessing here, and the Lord blessed this, and the Lord did this, and the Lord did this, and now just surrounded by all that the Lord has done. Listen, without Jesus Christ in your life, you're going to live a pretty sorry life. Pretty sorry life. But Paul had declared war on the disciples until he met Christ. And then Paul got baptized, and after being blind for 3 days, God got his attention real good. And now he's got a vision of reaching the world. But God stops him. God forbids him to go to several different places. And then a vision appeared to Paul in the night. There stood a man of Macedonia and prayed him, saying, Come over into Macedonia and help us. You just heard a man tonight stand here behind the pulpit and say, Come over to Macedonia and help us. Our boat, we need help. But you got to have a vision of doing something with your life. You know, what are you gonna do in your lifetime? Now, some of you are young, you're just getting started, raising families, and what's the goals? Again, challenge just given to us. What are your goals in life? And but you got to have a vision of doing something. You know, I don't want to just be a church member. I don't want to 3 times a week come and sit on a seat, sit on a pew. I mean, I want to do something with my life. And I just preached for Israel out there in St. Mary's, and I mean they're doing a great work. They got a great mission field there, and they're I mean God just raised the Warrens for St. Mary's. Michael and Amanda's where they're at Unalakleet now. I believe Michael and Amanda's raised for that part of the country. So, and Michael's got a vision of being a missionary. The Warrens, I mean, they've got a vision of doing some great things among the people out there in the village, and I want to be part of all that. I say I don't just want to come to church. And listen, you come to this church and you can be a part of a whole lot of stuff. I mean, I know the Native Hospital ministry is still going. The RAM ministry. I mean, you ought to, the camp ministry, you ought to have a vision of doing something with your life. Raise your kids doing the work of God. You may not be called to be a preacher, but we're all called to be missionaries. Do you have a vision? Nehemiah had a vision. In Nehemiah chapter 1, he asked about Jerusalem, and they told him that. In verse number 3 it says, And they said unto him, The remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. And it came to pass when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned certain days and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. And he began to confess his sin and the sins of Israel and asking God to forgive him and help him. And he said in verse 7, we have dealt very corruptly against thee and have not kept the commandments, nor the statutes, nor the judgments which thou commandest thy servant Moses. But if ye turn unto me, God says, but if ye turn unto me in verse 9, and keep my commandments and do them, though there were of you cast out unto the uttermost part of the heaven, yet will I gather them from thence, and will bring them unto the place that I have chosen to set my name. And Nehemiah, now he goes to the king, and he's got a burden, and he can't hide this burden that he's got. And wherefore the king said unto him, why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was sore afraid, and said unto the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad when the city, the place of my father's sepulchre, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? When God gets a hold of your heart and starts doing, you can't just hide it. I mean, when you have a burden, you're going to be sharing that burden. I mean, you're going to do something about the burden that you have. The king said unto me, for what dost thou request? So I prayed to the God of heaven, and I said unto the king, if it please the king, and if thy servant have found favor in thy sight, that thou wouldest send me unto Judea, to the city of my father's sepulchre, that I may build it. And the king said unto me, the queen also sitting by him, for how long shall thy journey be? And when wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Nehemiah had a vision, he had a burden, and he had faith. And listen, when you got a burden, you got a vision of seeing this faith promise go. I mean, you're going to put feet to your prayers. When you want to do something for the Lord, you're going to put feet to your prayers. You're not just going to sit there and pray about it. Now, we should pray about it. Should seek counsel about it. You know, you got something that you want to do, God's put on your heart, you should counsel with Pastor McGovern. And you should, you should seek wise counsel. And wise counsel starts with the pastor. It doesn't start anywhere else. Wise counsel starts with the pastor. But, so many people today are needing, they need a vision. They need a burden. People are in trouble. In our ministry, I work a lot trying to help preachers and churches, and I just got a call just before the service tonight, at about 3 o'clock actually. I got a call from a pastor, and he said, my wife she's got to leave. She's in bad shape. Someone asked yesterday at the international dinner my advice to a young man going into the ministry, and I said, you put God first, your wife second, your children third, and the ministry fourth. I had a friend he was a missionary in New Orleans, Bernie Murray, and Bernie told me, he said he worked with the seamen down in New Orleans, and he said I was working for the Lord. He said I was going to town working for the Lord, and he said my wife said she was right behind me. He said I buried her working for the Lord. He thought he's doing great things working for God, but the whole time he was throwing the dirt on his wife. She went away, and she never did come back. She came back, but in her mind was gone. She had a complete nervous breakdown, and she was gone. Now, The preacher that called me today, he said, Brother Roach, what do I do? The church is falling apart. He said, I'm just ready to throw in the towel. He said, my wife, I got to get my wife out of here. And I said, you're going to have to find another pastor to take that church. And you need to get her out of there. Just a lot of issues. A church like this, my wife, Betty, never had one problem with anyone in our church. But in other churches, these preachers' wives, they got issues with people in the church. But again, all churches are not like this church. But like I say, pastors are just, the devil is very busy. And that's why your vision is so important. The vision of this church is so important. We have no idea the impact that everything goes on in this church. When it comes to the judgment seat of Christ, when all the tallies are in, we're waiting to see how much our faith promise is. When all the tallies are in at the judgment seat of Christ, you're going to be amazed when you stand before God and He begins to show you the fruit of your ministry. When He begins to show you of all the people that you have helped over the years, of all the people that you reached, and then they went and reached someone else, and then they went and reached 10 more over here, and then these 10 went over here and reached 50 more. Those 50 more went over here and reached another 200 more. I think we're going to be absolutely shocked when we see the end result of just one of our ministries. It's going to be, I think it's going to be shocking. But do you have a vision? Do you have a vision? What is it that you're going to do with the rest of your life? Today is the first day of the rest of your life. You say, well, I've never had a vision. Well, remember, today's the first day of the rest of your life. What's done is done. Yesterday's gone. I can do nothing about yesterday. I wish I'd have done better yesterday. I wish I'd have done more yesterday. But I can do nothing about that. It is gone. It is like water spilt on the ground. You can't pick it up. The words that I spoke yesterday, I can't take them back. They're out there. The hurt, the people that I hurt, the people, anything I said that was wrong, it's done. But what I can do, I can forget yesterday and press forward. Today is the first day of the rest of Stan Roach's life. And I can do better today. I can do better tomorrow. I can do better this week and next month and the month after. I can do better going this way, but I can do nothing about what's past. So I need to forget what's past. I need to ask God's forgiveness for anything I did in the past, and I need to move forward with a vision. A vision. Listen, I want to be part of what God is doing. I want to be a part of the RAM ministry. I want to be a part of the mission program here in our church. I want to be a part of Pastor McGovern's ministry. I want to help them any way that I can. I want to pray for them every day. And Betty and I, we pray for you every day, and Daniel and the boys and your girls and their families. And I want to be a part of what's happening here. You say, well, you started this church. I did. I had a vision for this church, and I still do. I loved this church, and I still do love this church. And I want to be a part of what's going on. We support missions here. We give our tithe here. I want to be a part of what's going on. What is your vision? What is your vision? You say, well, I'm just a mom, and I'm not a very important person. You are a big VIP. You are a very important person, and you're raising children. You're training children that are going to grow up and be adults. if the Lord doesn't come back before long, you know, a lot of these kids sitting in here, they're going to be the moms and dads and the preachers and the deacons and the Sunday school teachers. They've got to be trained right. They've got to be taught right. The older women need to teach the younger women. Kids in this country are growing up like animals. I mean, they have no concept of life. Life is cheap. I mean, the games they play today, they're taught that life is just so cheap. Killing someone, that's not a big deal, just not a big deal at all. And they're being taught so much wickedness. Mom, you're very important. Dad, you're very important. A lot of kids don't understand. They don't understand what it means to have a dad. You mean there's a man that you actually call dad? The kids in the Yukon used to think Heather and Heidi and Josh, they couldn't believe that dad, is he your, what dad is he? He's our only dad. They couldn't understand it. I mean, I had kids tell me, I like my fifth dad better. Where there is no vision, the people perish. That's why this missions conference is so important. So important. Lord, I ask you to have your will and way in this invitation now. In Jesus'